Man, I really need to get back down to engineering. Bit of a problem with this episode was that, in my cabin, my recording of this episode got a little bit messed up, so I couldn't catch the beginning of it. Wasn't really my fault, but I did manage to get up to speed watching some previews and clips. So my review of this is going to be a little bit more off the cuff than usual, so forgive me. Interesting that my desk console chose the exact minute Lower Decks was coming on to go into its self-diagnostic scheduled maintenance mode. Fantastic. Who programmed this bitch? This episode is called Crisis Point. It is the 9th episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. And this episode is as schizophrenic as the last one. Am I getting too old for this, or are these last few episodes just very fast-paced and hard to understand? We got mile-a-minute jokes here, and it doesn't appeal to me as much as the middle episodes of the season, I'm sorry to say. Still not a horrible episode. It's not great. It's filled with references, but references do not make the show. One particularly egregious reference is that at one point Mariner refers to Boimler as a Zahn, which, if you don't know, Zahn was a cut character from Star Trek and was originally going to replace Spock in Star Trek Phase 2, which was going to be a sequel series to Star Trek, the original series. How would she know that? I have no idea. I'm now totally convinced that Mariner has actually watched Star Trek somehow in universe, which makes no sense. But whatever. Let's get into what actually happens in this episode. So for a teaser, we have what seems to be a second contact mission involving the Cerritos and these two competing races of rats and lizards. I guess that's what I'm going to call them. Humanoid rat, humanoid lizard. And anyway, Mariner is accused by the captain of interfering in their internal politics, which is a big no-no with regards to the Prime Directive, and it's absolutely egregious what she was doing on that planet. I would get shit-canned in 5 seconds for doing that. But regardless, they're beamed back up to the Cerritos. Freeman and Mariner get into a little fight. What else is new, right, guys? And in the meantime, Boimler is trying to run a holodeck program to help him train for an interview he has to get access to a special diplomatic training that I think the captain is offering. So, I mean, good on him for going after further training. But of course, Mariner has to ruin it, and Mariner hacks into Boimler's holodeck program to turn his training program into a film. And wouldn't you know it, the writers of this show just took that as a template to build millions and millions and millions of references upon. This whole film that plays out in the holodeck is like a big reference / parody to Star Trek the Motion Picture, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, the Kelvin Timeline films. So there's lots of lens flare everywhere, which I liked because it was a parody of Star Trek, Kelvin Timeline, Discovery, and Picard, which were egregious with the lens flares, and I didn't like very much regardless. Anyway, in this holodeck film that they're all playing characters in, Mariner's the bad guy, suffice to say, and Mariner is playing some type of Klingon captain named Vindicta, which is an interesting name, and her subordinates are Tendi and Rutherford, and yada yada yada. They get into an altercation with the Cerritos, and it ends off with a fisticuffs fight between real Mariner, playing Vindicta, and the holodeck version of Mariner, which is an accurate recreation of her. So what we have, in a sense, is a battle of fists and words between real Mariner and fake Mariner. And what ends up happening is we have a little bit of a soul-searching kind of self-discussion with herself with regards to Mariner. And it reveals nothing we didn't already know. It only basically serves to tell us that Mariner is trying to fail on purpose because that's what she believes the world thinks that she is, some kind of failure, and some kind of mental complex she has going on with her mother. I don't know, and I don't care, but again, Mariner is the aggravating factor in the plot for this episode. If we didn't have Mariner, we would hardly have any plots because we need Mariner to cast a wrench into the daily lives of Tendi, Boimler, and Rutherford, which is sad, but that's just how it is. Boimler gets to be the butt of every joke again. Rutherford is bland and cringy, and Tendi is just a blank slate still. Barely anything happens with Tendi in this episode again, which is a shame. But once this is resolved, and the battle between real Freeman and fake Freeman takes place in this holodeck program, they all go back to their normal lives, and Boimler fails his interview with Freeman to get the additional diplomatic training. So it kind of has a sour note ending, and Boimler learned nothing, and no one's further ahead except for maybe Mariner. Although Mariner really learned nothing about herself that she and we didn't already know. And the episode, visually, it looked fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the motion picture. I appreciated the fly-around shot of the Cerritos. While it was a parody of the motion picture, I did appreciate it. And it was funny. And I think at one point we even see Phillips cry looking at the Cerritos. Which got a little bit of a chuckle out of me. Lens flares aside, I thought it actually looked pretty good. The sequence of the Cerritos crashing into the planet looked awesome for an animated show. I don't know how it could have looked really that much better. So at the end of the day, I'd say this episode was funny enough, but as with all holodeck episodes, was ultimately inconsequential to the greater arc of the plot. I've never been a huge fan of holodeck episodes. In terms of A-plot, B-plot structure, this episode seemed to have a pretty cohesive single plot, which was a plus. I was getting a little bit tired of the A-plot, B-plot, but in that case it's refreshing. However, it's not fantastic. It's about 1 point better than last week's episode. Some people said they liked last week's episode. I didn't like it at all. I guess we're just different. So I'm giving this one a 6. 6 out of 10. That's all I can do. Ultimately, it's the visuals that save this episode. And above all else, the only one who can defeat Mariner is Mariner. I really hope the finale episode is better than this episode. So far, I think this episode managed to achieve one episode that was like a 7.5. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember what I gave every episode as a review score, but if we can hit a 7 for the last episode, I'd feel comfortable giving this whole series like a 6. You know, if you were comparing it to previous Trek, it'd be like a 3 or a 4. But if you're starved for Trek that's at least a little bit decent like I am, I'd feel comfortable giving it an average 6. You know, it's kind of worth watching. It's not disgusting. It doesn't make me feel bad. It didn't hurt my heart. What's that? Yeah, okay. No problem. I'm just doing my review. I'm doing my YouTube review right now. Of Star Trek. No, I don't know what Star Trek is. Okay. Yeah, it'll be done in a minute.